Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the legal and government correspondent, and we are interviewing candidates for office for the spring elections. The race that we are going to have this interview about is for the Supreme Court, and we have a primary coming up on February 21st. It's a four-way primary, and today's candidate and guest on the show, and I'll have you introduce yourself because I don't want to butcher your name.
Good morning. My name is Judge Janet Protasiewicz.
Okay, Protasiewicz. Did I get that right?
You did. You did great.
All right. Well, Judge, obviously you're running for Supreme Court in Wisconsin. There's been a lot of publicity about it. We've got a primary with the top two will advance to the general on April 4th. Because you are coming from another part of the state, can you introduce yourself to Western Wisconsin viewers and tell us a little bit about your background?
I'd be delighted to. So I'm very, very happy to be here with all of you today. My name is Janet Protasiewicz. I am currently a circuit court judge in Milwaukee County. And right now I handle family court cases. Prior to that, I handled homicide and sexual assault cases for 3 years and some heavy-duty drug dealing cases. Before I was elected to the bench, I was an assistant district attorney in Milwaukee County for 25 years, handling some really challenging cases, working very, very hard to protect families and protect our communities, dealing with children who were abused and neglected, and dealing with prosecuting really violent offenders. Worked my way through undergrad, worked my way through law school. And when I graduated from law school, what I really wanted to do was something that would impact our community. I was raised by teachers who had strong beliefs in, getting a good education and giving back to the community. And that's why I applied with the district attorney's office in Milwaukee. I was very honored to be appointed an assistant district attorney in Milwaukee and did that work for about 25 years before I decided to run for the bench.
What kind of cases did you prosecute as a prosecutor?
Oh, you name it. Domestic violence cases, armed robberies, homicides, you name it. And then I worked for, it's interesting in Milwaukee, we have a children's court unit. And I worked there for many years, dealing with cases with abused and neglected children and handling termination of parental rights cases. One of those termination of parental rights cases actually ended up right in front of our Wisconsin Supreme Court. And I did argue a case in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That was incredibly, incredibly rewarding work. And, really worked hard to put families back together when you could, and worked hard to get permanency for the children who suffered the abuse and neglect when you couldn't put the families back together. And by permanency, I mean really good adoptive homes or permanent guardianships with other family members who were, willing to bring them into their family.
Well, you've had experience arguing a case to the Supreme Court. You've had experience as a judge. Why are you running for Supreme Court?
For a number of reasons. The stakes are very, very high with the kind of issues that are going to come in front of our Supreme Court. But mostly I want to bring change and common sense to the Supreme Court. Get rid of the extremism, get rid of activist judges, and really have a Supreme Court that is respected and has integrity, and where the scales of justice are, in fact, even where there's no thumb on the scale. So really change, impartiality, combined with the, the cases that people really, really care about that are likely to be heard before the Supreme Court in the relatively near future.
Do you have an example of a case that you feel where extremism or politics has entered into the case?
Sure. On our United States Supreme Court, yes, the Dobbs decision. I tell people my personal value is that women should have a right to choose. Nonetheless, the law has to be evaluated based on the Constitution, based on the case law. And, I think you have so many women and so many families who have relied on the Roe decision. And I was quite frankly surprised, despite the indicators otherwise, that right was taken away. And I would suspect that that is an issue that's going to come in front of our Wisconsin Supreme Court. In regard to our Wisconsin Supreme Court, there are issues that, obviously concern me. The gerrymandering case, for one. concerns me, the dissent.
When you
that
say gerrymandering, you're referring to the districting that happens after every census, every 10 years, and why we have 75% Republican representation, but we have a state that is about 54% Republican.
Accurate. We are a battleground state. I think that everybody would have to agree we're a battleground state. Governor Evers won his race in 2018 by over 1%. He won it by more this time. Josh Call, had a close race, but then you look at Ron Johnson, a Republican, he won a seat on that same ballot. The state treasurer went to a Republican. So I think everybody has to agree we're a battleground state, no matter what side you're on, we're a battleground state. And you look at those maps and something's wrong. They just don't look right. And that was the product of intense gerrymandering of those districts. You just know that. And so, the dissent that was written in that case, that dissent that I believe to be really rooted in the law, I agree with the dissent in that matter. So, we've got, so many issues that are likely to come before our Supreme Court, so many issues.
Well, you've got 3 opponents, and the top 2 are going to advance on February 21st. What sets you apart from your opponents?
Well, I think the experience level for sure. And, being an assistant district attorney for 25 years certainly tells you that I have had to be objective and determine whether or not cases can be proved or not, work with victims, work with people, be impartial across the board, uphold people's constitutional rights. I can also tell you I had a very hotly contested race when I ran for judge. That gives you collateral benefits that, really cannot be overstated with what you learn to do in regard to how you run a race. Been a judge with, 3 years in homicide sexual assault court, handling some of the most challenging cases in Milwaukee County. And we have very, very heavy caseloads in Milwaukee County. But more than that, I give back to my community. I've worked with the Red Cross of Southeastern Wisconsin, installing smoke detectors. I've taught with the Department of Justice, taught prosecutors how to be better prosecutors, taught at Marquette Law School as an adjunct professor, trying to teach people how to be, really good litigators. So I've got a lot of experience, a lot of life experience, and a lot of experience in our courts.
Okay. And so what have you learned on the campaign trail, I guess, about Wisconsin overall?
Oh, it's so interesting. I tell people, and they kind of smile and say, "Are you serious?" I tell people I'm having the time of my life. Wisconsin is an incredibly beautiful state. And I have been all over, meeting people and hearing about issues that concern them. I'm from an urban area, so I'm hearing about issues from people that, I wasn't, that aware. I wasn't aware that, the energy towers in Barneveld were upsetting people. I wasn't aware how much, clean water and clean soil affects farmers handing down their farms generation after generation. And, universally, this entire state cares so much, and this entire state is so beautiful. So I'm traveling around, all the time, seeing our state, talking to people, and just, it's been a marvelous experience.
Now, a couple of the opponents of your opponents have, tried to either avoid or they have embraced the labels that the media has given. The media has said that you're more on the left of center, and we have 2 conservatives and another candidate that they've said is liberal. Do you agree with those labels, or how would you characterize your judicial philosophy?
Well, labels are interesting. I'll tell you, I have been very upfront. Wherever I go, people get the same message from me. It's not changed. I've been very upfront about my values in regard to, our democracy. And with that, I mean the redistricting, my values in regard to a woman's right to choose. But there are universal values that go from the far left to the far right about community safety and treating people fairly and being independent and being nonpartisan. So, I think that those issues all combine to make a candidate that I hope is appealing to the people of the state of Wisconsin. In regard to my judicial philosophy, just that: independent, an open mind, everybody is treated well. People come into, my courtroom, they're going to be treated well, no matter who they are. And I tell people, remember, we are all human beings. You're going to know people on these cases. You know, the litigators. Of course, you like some people better than others. It's human nature. But nonetheless, everybody is treated the same. You take those personal thoughts that you may have and you put them aside and go forward.
All right. Well, I see that our time is up. How do people learn more about you and your candidacy?
They can take a look at my website, which is janetforjustice.com. Again, janetforjustice.com. It tells you a little about me, about my background, gives you all sorts of interesting information.
Well, Judge, thank you for coming on the show. Good luck in the race, and maybe we'll see you again sometime closer to April 4th.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to welcome our viewers to investigate the candidates and make sure that you get out there and vote on February 21st.